All right, man, we got to talk a little bit of ball right here, man. Obviously, you got Tremaine Edmunds and Jordan Poyer. And the reason we got to talk about them two dudes, man, is because we got to figure out franchise tag situation or just, who you would decide if you had to, keep one, which is essentially what we're going to have to decide to do this offseason. Which player would it be and why? Both of these dudes coming off of very impressive seasons. Both of these dudes, in terms of what they have done in Buffalo specifically, has been impressive. Obviously, we talk about Tremaine, multiple-time Pro Bowler. We know what he's brought to the table. Jordan, we know Pro Bowler, All-Pro, what he's brought to the table as well. But when I first think about Tremaine, very unique, right? We know league-wide people love him because of the big size, the ranginess that he can play with, a true three-down linebacker with just freaky size in the interior part of that linebacker spot. And we know he's a volume tackler, 100-plus tackler every time he's been out there. He gets you tackles for loss. He's very physical in terms of the run game. And we know he's a high-end zone dropper. Now, we don't ask him to do a ton of man-to-man, but at the same time, you see how impactful he is. He's essentially that calming force, and when you pair him with the Matt Milano, you see the dynamic that they create and why those two guys are as good as they are individually, but also as a tandem. But some of the knocks on Edmunds is what? Not as much splash plays, right? Not a ton of interceptions, not a ton of sacks. And that's just because of how he's used with Leslie Frazier. We know, man, that's not, something that they like to do a lot with him in terms of the blitzing linebacker. That's more Matt. When you talk about the man-to-man coverage linebacker, that's still more Matt, or he'll obviously walk down one of those safeties, whether it's Micah or Jordan. So with that does negate some of the big play potential that I do think Edmunds is capable of. But then that creates the question of, is he worth a higher end dollar amount, even though he's not going to give you necessarily the high end splash that you might associate that type of dollar amount with? And like I said, for me, man, that is that unique question with Edmunds specifically, because he is really good. But that is the knock on him. And you do think, man, if I'm going to be paying a guy $10+ million per season, I want splash. I want some type of interceptions, forced fumbles, and sacks. And that is the part of Edmunds' game that is kind of lacking, so to speak. But now, when you talk about Jordan Poyer, Jordan, when you pair him with Micah, man, that's one of the best safety tandems in the NFL, bar none. But then when you watch Jordan individually, like we saw him this season because of Micah going down, man, you can see how Jordan is not only just impactful against the run, which we know, but he's also a guy that creates turnovers, and that has been the big thing for him since coming to Buffalo. You could just see how he's been able to generate turnovers, man. He creates a ton of splash plays on the back end of that defense, and he really just helps minimize some of the mistakes or some of the bad matchups that could potentially happen at times when you're talking about those tight ends and stuff like that, and slot receivers and things like that, man. I just think that Jordan does a really good job of just creating plays, man, and being a force multiplier on the back end of that defense. And when you talk about his market, I do think dollar-wise it would be cheaper than per se what Edmunds could potentially command on the open market. Now, once again, though, when you're talking about both players, to me, Jordan does have more impact because of how he is utilized with Leslie Frazier. We know, man, Coach Frazier ain't blitzing a ton. It's a lot of four-man pressure, and we got to cover on the back end. So when I think of that dynamic, I say which player is more impactful between Edmunds and Poyer. To me, the coverage element of Jordan and the ability to create those turnovers really does kind of tilt it in his favor. Whereas for me, I love what Edmunds does against the run, but at the same time, we could still see how a team like Cincinnati, right, playoff game, it can still be a little bit more of a challenge for him in a box like that, where, we stay with that two linebacker look and not go back to our base defense. That could be a little bit more, of an issue for him in some of those moments. Whereas when you think of Jordan and the way the NFL is going right now, it's a passing league. You want guys that can cover. You want guys that can create turnovers. And that is what Jordan has been doing at a high level very consistently. So, when I think of the both of them, man, I would love both of them to be here because I think both make this defense go and both makes this defense better. But you have to split hairs when you're talking about the either or element when you got two players like this who are going to command money and who are rightfully so deserving of those upgrades in payment. But to me, today, if I had to choose, I lean more Jordan Poyer in terms of bringing him back than Edmunds right now, just because I still got Matt Milano, and we know what Matt is capable of in terms of his ranginess, his ability to blitz, his ability to cover. To me, I just think that Jordan could give me more of what I need going forward in Buffalo. Whereas if I lose Jordan, I think that does create a little bit more of an issue. And that's what I don't want us to have, especially when you talk about how the AFC is, man, with some of these weapons from a passing standpoint. But that's my thoughts on the Edmunds and Jordan Poyer dynamic in terms of if we had to pick one that we're going to bring back, who would it be? But you already know, man. You let me know your thoughts. Who would you bring back and why? Also, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and until next time, baby, peace.